Hey everybody, this is Alexander Fitzgerald or Assassinato, and today I'm going to be looking at some hands. For those of you who don't know me, I was a tournament grinder back in the day. I won some online titles. I had WPT and EPT final tables, but I mostly play cash games now. They just fit a little bit better into my schedule, and I work quite a bit as a coach. I have a lot of students that are playing cash games, private games, live games, and do still do some small tournament coaching. But today, okay, that's enough. Let's get into the fun stuff. Today, I'm going to look over some hands that my students played and some hands that I played at 1-3 and some higher stakes as well. Not super high stakes. And we're just going to have some strategy discussion. We're going to have fun with it. And let's see, I put it in a quiz format so you can test yourself. So let's go to that. So here, my student was playing 1-3, and there was a couple of limpers, and they had ace queen offsuit. There was about $10 in the middle. What would you like to do here? So for each one of the questions, I'm going to ask you the question. I'm going to do a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Then I'm going to get into the answer. That 3 Mississippi will give you a second to pause if you would like to test yourself. I'd really recommend you test yourself and compare your answers to my own, because you'll get a lot more out of the practice that way. It's not the hours you put in, it's what you put in the hours. All right, let's get to work. So, what would you do here with ace queen offsuit? So, a lot of my students, when I first get them, they raise to about $10 here. What's the problem with that? You raise to about $10 and you get half the table to call you, right? Which is really a big problem with these big cards because these big cards make pairs, which are good, but pairs get run down a lot multi-way. So I'd recommend a larger raise. This was a deeper stacked 1-3 game, so you could go up to about $20, about two times the pot. And that's what my student ended up doing. And I loved what my student did here. So we got a couple of callers, and it got checked to us on the flop. So big blind goes ahead and calls you. One of the limpers goes ahead and calls you. The board comes 5-8-2, two spades. It gets checked to you here. What would you like to do? Would you like to check or bet? If you did want to bet, how much did you want to bet to? So my student here bet about $25, and villain 4 went ahead and called. The turn was the king of spades, and it was checked to him. Okay, so right here, what would you like to do? So your C bet didn't work. The turn comes the king of spades. You got the ace of spades in your hand. You want to check or bet right here? Take just a few seconds. Think about it. If you do want to bet, how much do you want to bet to? All right, so compare your bet size to what my student did. So my student went ahead and overbet here, and this is a move him and I have worked on, and it did go ahead and work. Now let's talk about why this play is so effective. So pre-flop, we already talked about the pre-flop. On the flop, it's tempting to check and see a free card right here, but here's what's really nice about the C bet. So you bet about $25. So you're betting 25 to win 89. So let's say 25 to win 89 right here. Let's see what we got. Your bet needs to work as a total bluff about 28% of the time. So the first thing that's working for you here is both players are probably going to brick out about 35% of the time, something like that. So there's a good chance you win it right here. But what's really nice is when you get called, think about it. Your opponent doesn't know anything about your range. You could just be C betting with ace jack offsuit, no spade. You could be one of those people that just likes to bet all the time. Now, you know a lot about your opponent's hand, though. So, one of the things I'd really recommend you to do when you're on offense, when you're the person betting, is ask yourself a couple of questions. So, the first question you should ask yourself is, what does my opponent not have? So, right here, your opponent likely would start with the best hands first. Your opponent likely would have check raised with some sets. That's a very dangerous board to just flat the sets with. The sets are also just not that many combinations. The Your opponent likely would have. So let's just take a look at that breakdown really quick. Let me pull up. I think I had Flopzilla up earlier today. So let's say your opponent just called you out of the blinds right there. And this is a very simple hand range calculator. There's a bunch of them on the market. This is the one I like the most. So let's say your opponent just called. So this is 1-3. People call a little too much. This range doesn't have to be perfect. I just wanted to show you something. So the 5 of hearts, 8 of spades, 2 of spades board right here. What we're going to see is the sets are only about 9 combos out of the 365 he starts with. And we could debate until the cows come home this range, right? Some people like to call with their offsuit aces out of the big blind. Other people do not. Let's not get dragged down by the details. Mostly, the big thing I want to show you is the sets are not a ton of combinations. That's only about 9 combinations. What you'll notice is the top pairs are a lot more combinations. That's about 29 combinations. If he is the type of person to play some fives, that's going to be about 18 combinations. The bottom pairs are about 12 combinations. So there's going to be a number of flush draws. There's going to be a number of open-ended straight draws. So what we're seeing here is if we think about the best hands right here, the sets, there's a good chance he would have raised. The 2 pairs, there's a good chance he would have raised. In those flush draws, let's say he continues with just any pair on this flop, any draw. Those flush draws are going to be about 17% of the hands. So about 83% of the time, he doesn't have a flush draw right there. So that becomes very pertinent information when we get to this turn. So on this turn, this player checks. One tell I notice a lot of times people, when they don't like the spade, they keep staring at the board. I'm not really sure why some guys do that. Not everybody does that, but I'd say maybe 60, 70% of players I deal with at really private games, low-level recreational players will do some kind of, hard check, like, don't you bet into me, stare at it. Those are things you want to confirm before you play this hand. But if we think about it, this flush draw comes out here and the guy doesn't have it the vast majority of the time and you're blocking the nuts. So what my student went ahead and did here is overbet. And the overbet is very powerful because you're risking 125 to win 239. So you bet here only needs to work 52% of the time, but you get another 9 cards on the river will help you quite a bit. So 9 divided by 46 unseen cards, about 19.5% of the time, you're going to be able to hit that river. And that means you got a lot of things going for you right here. And remember, the majority of what this person had on the flop was going to be mediocre pairs. Now, you could do something with that. Now, let's say the person turned the flush. That's very unfortunate. So about 20% of the time, depending on how you range the gentleman, there's a good chance he jams on you. However, a lot of people with middling flushes will just go ahead and call there. And with the middling flushes, if they're just going to go ahead and call there, that gives you another shot at the river. Because a lot of times in deep stacks, people don't like to stack off with just the nut, without anything but the nuts, and you're blocking the nuts. Now, what that means is, let's say he has 9-7 of spades. Maybe there's a chance he goes in and just calls that because your overbet weirds him out, and he just doesn't really know what to do at that particular point. Now, maybe if he's got the queen jack of spades, he just goes, all right, if you got this hand beat, good luck to you. But you got a lot of things going for you right here. You're blocking the nuts. A lot of people don't like to stack off in deep stacks without the nuts. The majority of his range on that flop is going to be like 9s, 10s, 8x, 7s, 6s. You put a lot of pressure on the person. So this is an overbet that I've been working on with my student. I was really happy he made that. And I think that's a move you should have in your arsenal as well. So let's go ahead and go to the next hand. So in this hand, it was 1-3. and everybody had about 500, but there was a straddle. And villain six went ahead and raised to $20. Our opponent here goes at we go ahead and call right here, and villain five goes ahead and calls as well. The board comes ace of hearts, nine of hearts, five of diamonds, and villain six makes a very traditional continuation bet, so that's not really the crux of his hand. We go ahead and call here. I think a lot of people are calling. So we'll just speed up to the turn where he bets 75 into 114. All right, so tell me what you're thinking right here. Tell me what you would do. Take a few seconds, pause the video if you need more time. So this is actually a situation where unless your opponent is very adventurous, you should actually be exploitatively folding quite often. And let's talk about the questions you should be asking on defense. So on defense, so on offense, you always want to be asking yourself, what's the purpose of my bet? If it's a bluff bet, what do I expect to fold out? If it's a value bet, what do I expect will call me? What do I think my opponent doesn't have? I really like that question because if you know what your opponent doesn't have, it's a lot easier to figure out what he does have. Now, on the defense, you want to ask yourself three questions. One, does my opponent value bet with a hand that I beat? Number two, does my opponent do this with draws? Number three, how many more bets are coming? You have a real problem right here. So there's there's certain lines that are just underbluffed in low stakes cash games by the general public in North America. Those lines are raise turn, raise river, triple barrel, three bet followed by a double barrel, raise multi-way, bet into multiple players, fire again on the turn, overbet. The bet check bet line is usually like a decent top pair. And if they three bet the flop, that tends to be the hand as well. So this person fired into multiple people and then fired again. This is also a bigger bet. A lot of people have timing tells. A lot of people have bet sizing tells on this turn. Let's say they have a mediocre pair or a mediocre draw they're trying to get to the river with. They'll bet a little bit smaller, and that kind of screws them. Because if you think about it, if they had ace nine or they had a set of nines, a lot of times people see that flush draw out there and they just decide to go ahead and bet. So they decide to bet bigger. And that really helps you know where they're at a little bit if your opponents have those kind of bet sizing tells, which is why you always want to be looking at the showdowns even when you're not involved in a hand. That'll help you reverse engineer a lot of hands. So here, let's apply our defensive questions to this situation. Does my opponent bet this big with an ace 10? Maybe, maybe not. That's kind of a judgment call. A lot of people wouldn't bet that big with an ace 10. Number two, does my opponent do this with draws? That's yes. I think king, queen of hearts, king, jack of hearts, king, 10 of hearts does that some percentage of the time. The problem is the king, queen of hearts, that's one combo. The king, jack of hearts, that's one combo. So if we're taking a look at this person's preflop raising range, let's say, it doesn't have to be perfect right here, but let's say this guy raises the straddle, and let's say it's something like this. This doesn't have to be perfect. What we'll notice here on this board, and we have the ace of diamonds, jack of diamonds. What we'll notice is there's a lot more combinations of ace king than flush draws. So the king queen, the king jack, the king 10, the queen jack, the queen 10, the jack 10 of hearts. That's about 6 combos out of 92, but each one of those top pairs is 8 combos. So there's 8 combos of ace king, there's 8 combos of ace queen. So you have a little bit of a problem here. Now, once you get down into these lower suited aces, it's just about 2 combos of each. But remember, we're not even sure he's firing those hands. So we have a bit of an issue. And the same thing with the flush draws. We're not sure if he'd be firing this big with them. Now, if you have somebody who understands capped ranges, this is why you got to be pretty careful with the theory. Theoretically, he should be pressing on you quite a bit. You've capped your range. You should also be asking yourself at any point during the hand, what hands do I not have? You really likely would have 3-bet with aces, kings, queens, ace, king, hands like that. And there's a good chance you would have raised sets or two pairs on the flop. The problem is, does your guy even know that? Does your guy even care about that? And generally at 1-3-2-5, most people don't care about those kind of things. Again, if they double barrel after they fired into multiple players and they double barrel a little bit big, that line tends to be under bluffed. So you got to be a little bit careful here. So you'd have quite a bit of equity on the flop, which is why you should call on the flop. But on that turn, when he makes that more serious double barrel, and you're not even sure that some of the weaker aces or some of the weaker flush draws, you can go ahead and fold. Now, a lot of people say, can I call and reevaluate the river? That's why you always want to ask yourself how many more bets are coming. When this person is fired into multiple players and fired again pretty serious on the turn, there's a really good chance there's going to be a triple barrel on the river. And you're probably folding to that. So instead of just handing this $75 to this guy because he's a nice guy, you can just go ahead and save your money right here and save a couple of bucks. So the hero folds, a lot of people don't like the hero folds. Nobody likes being told you have to make hero folds. I love hero folds. If I can fold consistently when I'm most likely beat, but my opponents can't, that puts me in a very advantageous situation. That means I'm playing big pots on my terms. Remember, the only person who can make you play a big pot is you. But most people are just kind of beholden to the hand. They have a top pair and they see a missed flusher out there. They don't think about all the factors. Let's take a look at another hand at 1-3 with $500 buy-ins. So we raise here with the 10-9 of diamonds. Like most 1-3 games in the United States of America, villain 9, villain 1, villain 4 have called, so you got a multi-way pot. So you got kind of a goofy situation here. You flop a top pair, it gets checked to you. You do a small continuation bet and you get raised right here. So villain 9 goes ahead and raises. Villain 1, villain 4 decide to fold. It is on you. What would you like to do? Take a few seconds, pause if you think you're going to need more time than that. Okay, so apply some defensive questions right here. The three defensive questions I would have you applying consistently, because the thing is, at the table, you're not going to be able to remember everything. It's just like an MLB hitter with a pitch coming at him 100 miles an hour. You don't have much time. So these three things might be all you get to think about, and I think they'll actually put you in a pretty good spot. So number one, is he value betting a hand that you beat 10-8 suited? A lot of people, sometimes the barbecue dads will raise a random bad 10 here just to see where they're at, but a lot of people won't do that. Number two, is this a draw? Well, it could be 9-8, but what's the problem? This could be 5-6, but what's the problem? You're blocking the 9-8. So, and a lot of people just like to call with their draws, so we have a bit of a problem there. Number three, how many more bets are coming? This person has shown a lot of strength. It's really likely a lot of bets are coming. So you're in a pretty precarious situation here. This is also one of the lines that's pretty underbluffed by American players. Many players will not raise multi-way without just an incredible hand. This is really likely to be ace-10, a set of fours. Once in a while, you'll get lucky, and this is 9-8 of spades. It's just backdoor draws along with the open-ended straight draw. So, like we said, the recreational players, the ones I've heard jokingly referred to as barbecue dads, once in a while, they'll raise with a draw here to see where they're at. Once in a while, they'll raise with just like 9s or 8s or ace-7 to see where they're at. So versus those players, you can call once because they'll shut down a lot on the turn. But let's say this is somebody you know is a more aggressive player. This is a more deliberate player. You can actually make a pretty heroic fold right here. And it would be correct if you think about how this hand is likely to play out. All right, so I got you folding a little bit. Let's put you in a different situation. One more time, 1-3. You got the straddle on. And you decide to raise right here. And you get called in two places. And the board comes ace of clubs, 7 of hearts, 2 of clubs. This was a hand I was working on with one of my students. This is based on a hand I played as well. So there's a lot of history going on behind this. You flop middle set, and it's checked to you. There's $64 in the middle. What would you like to do? Take a few seconds if you feel you're going to need more time. All right. So a lot of people say, well, if you were going to bet here, how much were you going to bet? So a lot of people say, I want to keep it consistent. I've been betting pretty small multi-way. However, let me ask you, how many of your opponents are actually paying attention to you? How many of your opponents are just on your phone or watching the ball game or doing whatever they like or just talking to someone at the table? If they're not paying attention to you, you can take advantage of that. Because let me ask you something. In your games, everybody tells me the same thing. Nobody ever folds. Nobody ever folds. Nobody ever folds. So, okay, let me ask you something. If you bet $50 here, is anyone going to fold ace eight of hearts? Or hell, even ace eight of spades? Most people tell me no, they probably won't. You want to be careful about getting into the trap of, I would fold. I would fold a mediocre ace if somebody bet that big. But remember, not everybody is you. Remember, you're the type of person that studies in your free time. You're studying right now. 99% of players don't do that. They just go into, I have a flush draw. Would I like to continue with my flush draw? Yes? Okay, I'm going to call whatever goes out there. Or I've got top pair and there's a flush draw out there. Do I want to just put this guy on a flush draw and call? If that's the case, they're probably just going to call whatever is out there. So we set the table real nice with this big bet here. In the turns the four hearts, it gets checked to us. There's 164 in the middle. What would you like to do? All right, so it's on us. Pause if you need more time. How much would you like to bet here? So a lot of folks say, I'd overbet right here because I don't think this guy wants to fold the top pair when there's all these missed draws out there or all these potential draws. Okay, that's fine. But remember, there's two ways to fall off the horse. There's three bets that actually get your opponents to think: triple barrels, overbets, and all ins. And if you overbet right here, you get the guy thinking, which we do not want. So I would recommend just betting large. As long as it's not an overbet, you'll likely still get called. Now, the one thing I don't like about this bet is most people actually don't know what's in the pot live. So this will look closer to an overbet to them. So you could even go a little bit smaller here than what my student did, but it's still directionally correct. Now, the river's the king of hearts and it gets checked to us. So the backdoor flush draw came in. What would you like to do here? I would still have you jam in this river because they're just going to fixate on the missed clubs and just call down. I jokingly call missed draws to myself calling juice. It just gets people calling. So they see the primary flush draw, the flush draw on the flop missed, and a lot of times people are still gonna call. So my student jammed here. He got called. He didn't get to see the hand, but he won a really nice pot. All right, so next hand, we're just gonna keep humming through these. So this was a 2-5 game, and there was everybody had about 1,500, and there was a straddle on, and one person just called the straddle. And my student went ahead and made it 55, and villain A called. The board came ace of diamonds, nine of spades, 10 of spades. It got checked, and it was on them. What would you like to do here? Well, I think most of us are betting, so I'll go past this. So he goes in and fires a little bit bigger just because, again, any ace is probably going to call you, any draw is probably going to call you, and that's fine. The turn comes the five of spades, and it gets checked to him. It gets checked to you. What would you like to do in this situation? Again, a lot of those draws, a lot of those aces, seeing the missed draws, are probably just going to still call you, so we can go ahead and fire here. A little bit bigger. A thin bet is usually better than a thin check. The reason why a check here is a little bit dangerous is because what do you just tell your opponent you don't have? Well, you likely would have fired with two pairs, sets, ace, king. So when you check back there, it's really likely you have one mediocre pair. Unsurprisingly, most of your opponents play a whole lot better when they know what you have, which is not good. So what we don't want is we check back here and our opponent goes, oh, okay, he's got some mediocre pair and maybe I can get him off of it. Some people will fire that river quite a bit as a bluff. Some people will never fire it as a bluff. It's all over the map. Unless you have a very specific read on the opponent, I'd be very careful about that. And most people call way too much, so I really like this thin turn bet right here. And the river comes the two of spades and it gets checked to us. So here, well, tell me, what would you like to do typically? Let's talk about that first. So typically, if your opponent's super aggressive here, you want to be careful about doing a really thin value bet. Why do you want to be careful about that? So let's say you bet $250. Now, this line is typically overcalled by bad players, so I like this play, but let's say you're playing in Vegas and people actually know what they're doing. Well, let's say this guy has queen of spades, jack of hearts, and he was just gambling a little bit. And now he sees he blocks the flush, and then you do this, well, he's got a flush draw blocker. And let's say he sees you do this really small bet on this river. He's going to be thinking to himself, if my man really made a big flush here, wouldn't he bet a little bit bigger for value? If my man had a set, maybe he bets a little bit bigger for value. I don't know. I feel like this is thin value. Maybe I can run him off of it by bluffing him off by blocking the flush, by just jamming. So if you think you're going to reopen to that kind of action, you just go ahead and check back here. But if you're dealing with a typical bad recreational player in these United States of America, I think you can go for one more street of value. My student did end up winning that pot. So, okay, we got another deep stacked 2-5 hand. Straddles on, one call. He goes ahead and raises, and he gets called in a couple of places. And the board comes 9 of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, 5 of clubs. And the straddle goes ahead and leads $40 into 142. It is on you. What would you like to do versus this donk bet? Go ahead and take a few seconds if you need them. All right, it's on you. What would you like to do? We go ahead and raise here. This player calls. The turn's the 2 of clubs. It gets checked to you. Check or bet? Take a few more seconds if you need them. I'd really recommend you test yourself. It's not the hours you put in, it's what you put in the hours. At the table, it's going to be going really fast. So when you're studying, you want to put as much time in as possible. That way it goes into that unconscious competence territory. That way, when you're at the table, you'll go, oh, I know this one, and you'll be much better prepared. All right, we fire again, and we get called. And the river comes the king of diamonds. It's check to you. Check or bet? All right, that is time. We go ahead and check here. Now, we ended up winning that pot. Obviously, for these videos, I try to pick the hands that go really well and really teach us something. So a lot of these hands we do end up winning. So what happened here is your opponent bet 40 into 142. Now let me ask you a question. How would things change if he bet 80 into 142? So pay attention when you're playing against bad players. A lot of times they telegraph the strength of their hands based on their bet sizes when they donk lead. A lot of times when people are fishing around with third pair, second pair, backdoor draws, or whatever it is, and they don't want you to blast them off the hand, they donk lead 1% to 49% of the pot, just trying to slow you down a little bit. When they actually flop huge, let's say he's got like 8-7 here and he wants to get the party started, a lot of people jump the gun because they're afraid of that flush draw, and they'll donk lead 50% or more. So those bigger bets can sometimes let's get the party started. So now that doesn't mean they never lead small when they flop big. It just means they do it a little bit less often, which is why this flop raise is so important. So you raise here, and this guy's really likely to help you play perfectly. Because let's say he has 8-7, he might think to himself, oh, it's my lucky day. This is someone who's super attached to their aces, kings, or queens, and they're really likely to give me a lot of money. Maybe I should 3-bet back. Or, ooh, someone's got a set right now. I need to raise again before this board pairs. Okay, that's all well and fine, but what's going to happen is if he was just goofing off with the 6-7 of hearts or the 9-7 of spades or pocket sevens trying to find out where he's at, he's really likely to just call you raise. Very nice. You just got yourself nice value. If he did flop the 8-7 or he did flop a set of fives or whatever he wants to party with, he's really likely to raise again. Therefore, you can just fold. Most people remember the 3-bet on the flop, the third bet, excuse me, on the flop that tends to be underbluffed by the general North American poker playing population. So you can just go ahead and fold here if you get raised. Instead, we get called. It's really likely to be a draw or an inferior pair. We go ahead and bet again on this turn. He goes ahead and calls. And on this river with the flush draw coming in, really hard to get another street of value out of a weaker 9. If he did have a flush draw, he was playing that way. Obviously, he's ahead. So we just go ahead and check back. And we did end up taking this pot versus, don't even remember. Okay, so here we got the ace-8 of clubs. Straddles on, and there's one raise. And it's on us with the ace-8 of clubs. So this hand we're going to go ahead and call with the implied odds we got going on. We're calling 35 to win about 1,500. So right here, 35 to win 1,500 right here. So our implied odds. Now, this isn't perfect because we get squeezed every once in a while, but we're getting about 42 to 1. Something I'd really recommend you do some percentage of the time is just pull up Flopzilla or something similar to this and just see how often these hands flop. So here we get the ace-8 of clubs, and what we're going to see is we'll have the top pair about 18% of the time. We'll have the nut flush draw 10% of the time. We got a lot to work with. It's also really important to know how often you flop what in what situations. So obviously in these cash games that are very deep stacked, top pair doesn't end up winning as much of the time as we'd like. So we're trying to flop 2-pair better. So we want to know how often 2-pair or better flops. So it's important you know these numbers off the top of your head. 10-9 suited will flop 2-pair or better 5.6% of the time. 10-8 suited will flop 2-pair or better 5.2% of the time. 10-7 suited 4.9. 10-6 suited 4.6. A pocket pair will flop a set or better 10.8% of the time, if I remember correctly. Now, that doesn't mean every time you're getting 20 to 1, you just call because you're going to get squeezed. There's going to be bad flops. People will catch up, etc. So in general, the rules I use, these are not perfect, but they seem to keep me out of trouble. And if I am in a private game where it's expected, I play a lot more hands. These are really good guideposts. There's some private games where if you're not given enough action, you're going to get kicked out. So it's important to know these numbers. It's important to know how often your hands flop and what kind of implied odds you should have. It's also important to know who 3-bets behind you quite frequently because that changes how often you can call. But when people are not squeezing too often, the implied odds I like are 15 to 1 with pocket pairs, 25 to 1 with suited connectors, 35 to 1 with suited gappers, 50 to 1 with suited 2 gappers, and I just don't bother with the suited 3 gappers that often. Unless it's a game I'm expected to do a lot of action. Now, you got to be very careful when you play those hands because post-flop, you could make a mediocre 2-pair and somebody wants to party. And you know, hey, this is not typically the guy that likes to get chips in without the nuts. So it's important to remember at that point, raise turn, raise river, triple barrel, 3-bet followed by a double barrel, over bets, bet check, bet lines. These lines raise multi-way, bet into multiple players, and then bet again on the turn. These lines tend to be a little bit more underbluffed. So we got to slow down at that point and ask our defensive questions. Is he value betting anything worse? Is he is he firing like this with a draw? How many more bets do I expect are coming? So we decided to go ahead and call here. And I usually, honestly, if I have 15 to 1, I'll usually go with the suited aces. That's cutting it a little close, but I can usually make it work. You can be 20 to 1 and be pretty careful. The suited Broadways also flop closer to the nuts a little bit more. Now, the board comes 8-10-3 with 2 diamonds. Villain 5 goes ahead and checks. Villain 8 fires $75 into 112. And it's on us. What would we like to do here? Would we like to fold, call, or raise? What questions are we thinking of right now? All right, that's time. I honestly don't even bother. I'm trying to make flush over flush at these stack depths. Top pairs, I'm not even excited about. What am I going to do with a second pair here and no redraw? And a lot of people have bet sizing tells multi-way. They bet 1% to 49% of the pot when they're just trying to see what's happening. Uh, when they're just trying to figure out where people are at in the hand. But when they flop big or they got that overpair or they got that set and they see all those flush draws and straight draws out there, they go, okay, it's time to thin this field. So thinking about our defensive questions, does he do this with a hand that I beat? Could this be like 8-9 of hearts? Yeah, sure. It could be once in a while. And again, the barbecue dads do a lot of big bets just trying to figure out where they're at. So you could call a little bit more versus them. Now, could he be doing this with a draw? Yes, this could be a draw. But the biggest problem is how many more bets are coming. This is someone who means business. This is a pretty big bet into multiple players. So you got to know this player's shutting down a lot on the turn before you can continue. And honestly, I'm not even interested in these pots that much. Because let's say you're playing 2-5 here and everybody can buy him for 1,500 or whatever it is. So let's see, there's $7 for 9 hands. So it's 77 cents. Let's just say 78 cents. So you're paying 78 cents a hand, but you could probably double up your 1,500 chips a lot of the time. This isn't perfect, but just as an illustration, you're getting damn near 2,000 to 1 implied odds on any hand. You can be a sniper and just sit back and you don't have to go too hard. And a lot of times, if you can be patient in cash games, that's 90% of the job. As I got older, I got a lot more patient at the poker table. And that's not actually the most helpful in tournaments. In tournaments, you got to be rocking and rolling, staying ahead of those blinds and antes. But if you can just be patient, the game is yours in cash. Because a lot of the times you just hang back. And then you're like Deontay Wilder when the guy leaves his jaw out there. You just go bang, and that's it. You take a full stack. There's your night's work when you're 200, 300 big blinds deep. So that being said, right here, I don't like the spot. If you want to fold, that's fine. Good players make bad folds all the time. Good players make bad folds all the time. Bad players make bad calls all the time. It's okay to be a little tight. That's fine. So we're going to continue. Now, you might be saying, Alex, you just said there's multi-way bet sizing tells right here. You just said a lot of times when people get bet bigger multi-way, they want to get the party started. They've got a stronger hand. But when they bet smaller, they're trying to test the waters. Weren't you just doing that in an earlier hand? Yes. But my opponents don't speak my language. I don't play in a game if I think people can perceive those kind of things. If I think a guy can flop a top pair and just fold to my c-bet correctly, I'm leaving that game. Why would I play that game? There's so much money in this country. Why would I want to play in that game? So there's an understanding gap. There's an execution gap. As I believe Darrow Kearney was talking about that recently. There's a lot of things your opponents should do, but what I'm concerned about is what's actually going to happen, not what should happen. So continuing, we have Jack 10 of hearts. There's a straddle one more time. We'll keep rocking and rolling with these. I've been talking to a lot of folks who are playing 2-5 games and it becomes match the stack, or a lot of people buying for 300 big blinds. So let's keep talking about those hands I was talking about recently. We raise the straddle and we get called in a couple places. The board comes 10 of clubs, 8 of clubs, 5 of hearts. It gets checked to us. It's on us. What would we like to do right here? Okay. We go ahead and fire out, and we get called by one player. The turn is the king of diamonds. It gets checked to us. Check or bet? What should you be thinking about right now? It's about the process. It's about the process. It's okay to get wrong answers if you follow the process. It's not good to just impulsively do things and not learn from it. You got to learn from your process so you can correct your process. What would you like to do here? Okay. We go ahead and fire and we get called. The river's the 3 of clubs. It gets checked to us. It's on you. Check or bet. I need more coffee. It is too damn early. Too damn early to be thinking this hard. Damn it. All right. In the comments, tell me your favorite caffeinated beverage when you play cards. You a Red Bull guy? You a tea person? I like my black coffee in the morning. I like my tea at night. For some reason, I can fall asleep with the tea later at the night. Black tea, real bitter. I like that. So here we do a small continuation bet, and that's fine. If you wanted to go bigger, you could probably get away with that. But the small bets are nice. If you're doing some small bets with just backdoors and whatnot, it's nice to throw in some top pairs. It's nice to throw in some sets with that once in a while just to mix it up. Now, when he checks you, remember, you know a lot about his range. He doesn't know anything about your range. You could just be continuation betting with ace jack of spades. You could just be, you could have a set. He doesn't know anything. But remember your offensive questions. What does my opponent not have? What is the purpose of my bet? So what does your opponent most likely not have there? Think about the whole thing. So he was on the straddle. He just called. So he likely would have 3-bet with a lot of his premiums pre-flop. He just called on this board. He likely would have raised his sets, his 2 pairs, maybe even some better tens, but not always. So what does he likely have there? He's got a lot of tens. He's got a lot of eights. He's got a lot of straight draws. He's got a lot of flush draws. You beat most of that. So you go ahead and go for thin value. And then when he checks on this river, this is a very complicating river, but you can just check back. You earned yourself a showdown. Now, let's say he leads $150 here. What should you do in that situation? So river leads tend to be a bit more honest. So you do have to be careful with that. So when people donk lead on the flop or the turn, a lot of times if they do those small donk leads, 1 to 49% of the pot, that's someone trying to keep you from blasting you off the hand. Or excuse me, that's someone trying to keep you from blasting them off the hand. But when a draw comes in and somebody donk leads river, that tends to be a stronger range. So you could just make a fold right there. Now let's go to ace 10 offsuit. There's a straddle on. You got the ace 10 off. What would you like to do here? Think about it. I would rather you raise with a 10-8 of hearts here. Because the thing about the 10-8 of hearts is one time out of 20, it's going to flop 2 pair or better. Ace 10 offsuit, you're asking for trouble with a lot of mediocre pairs. Mediocre pairs out of position with deep stacks are huge trouble. Once you cap your range and someone just puts those big bets in there, you're going to have a lot of problems. So I don't even mind folding this. Now, if you got the ace queen offsuit versus that straddle, okay. Again, still makes mediocre pairs, and we're in an earlier position, but they're slightly stronger. So we go ahead and raise here, and we get called by villain 5 right here. So the straddle goes ahead and calls us. The board comes 9-2-2 and 9-2-2. I thought I said 3 twos the first time. So he checks to you. A 77 in the middle. What should you do? We go ahead and fire 25. He calls. The turn's the five of clubs. It gets checked to you. Check or bet. You decide to check back right here. The river's the king of hearts, and he goes ahead and bets 75. What would you like to do? Take a few more seconds if you need it. This is one of those situations you should call more regularly. Now, the reason for that is straddles, people get really testy on their straddles. You do that very small bet on a paired board where they feel like it's hit or miss. I wouldn't be shocked if Jack 7 of spades peeled right here. And once you check back that turn, what are they going to do? They don't think they can win with Jack high on the river. This was their whole plan the whole time. I'll just lead once he bricks all the time. So you go ahead and pick it up here with what has considerable showdown value. A lot of missed draws as well. All right, so you got the 10-8 offsuit, and you were on the straddle right here. So there's a raise and there's a call. So this one's a bit more precarious. So you're calling right here. Let's see, you're calling 25 to win like 3,000. So you're getting 120 to 1 right here. And let's just see how often that hand flops. 10-8 off. Let's say two pair better. How often are we going to hit that? So about 4.5% of the time, we're going to hit two pair better. If we just keep it to solid hands, we could probably make this work. What's really going to screw you is if you call, flops a mediocre pair, a guy fires into multiple players, you call, which is fine. But then he fires again on the turn. Again, that line is a little underbluffed, so you got to be really careful right there. So we decide to call, and the board comes 10 of hearts, 7 of hearts, 4 clubs. We check, and it goes bet and call. What would you like to do here? Without the redraw in this situation, I wouldn't mind if you just even folded right here. This was not what we were fishing around for. Because ask yourself, how many more bets are coming? Ask yourself your defensive questions. Do they bet worse? Could they have worse? 10-6 seems like a bit of a reach. Pocket nines, pocket eights, maybe, but you're blocking you have one of the eights. Could this be a draw? Yeah, this could be flush draws, this could be straight draws, but that negates the next part, which is how many more bets are coming. There's likely going to be more bets, and you're probably just folding to those bets, so why not fold right now? How often is this really going to go check, 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 check? Not that often. So just save yourself the $75 right there. Okay, let me do something right here. I'll be right back. All right, continuing. So we got the straddle on. There's a pre-flop raise. We got the king eight of hearts. Again, okay, this is, if you're in a game where you're expected to play some more hands, you can go ahead and play this. This one's a little bit dicier because you're not drawn to the nut flush right here. But we decide to go ahead and call it. And the straddle calls as well. The board comes 9-8-7. Oh, yeah, I remember this. This is a real hand my student played. Yeah, I mean, they're all real, but sometimes I make, they flub a bet or something like that, so I clean it up a bit. So this one was really interesting. So it checks. He decides to check this turn, which is fine because the problem is you can't really go for two streets. And if you bet once and then you check river, you cap your range pretty severely. Although I guess you cap your range here. So there's a good debate for either. Now the river's the 3 of clubs and he checks here. Now I thought this was really interesting. It got checked to villain 9, who's like a decent player. I wouldn't say super aggressive or super tight. This is a player him and I have talked about a bit. And this player bets $35. What would you like to do here? Would you like to call or fold? So if this player has any gamble, you got to go ahead and call here. But this is something I've noticed with a lot of the times when I play. I mean, this is lower stakes. I mean, it's not the lowest stakes, but it's not. You're not getting just the straight killers. It's not 25-50 versus five pros and a few recreational players. No, a lot of times that one third bet on the river is underbluffed. I mean, if we think about it, a lot of people won't go for the thin value right there with like 10-8 spades. A lot of guys won't do that. And he's probably, if he was one of those types to bluff a draw, we probably would have seen him bluff that 10 or those diamonds earlier. So this is kind of a precarious spot. So this was kind of a fun one I threw in. He folded right here, and I loved it. I loved it. I think I can't tell you how many times this is just some guy who hated the flop with jacks or something like that. So I like that right there. So here we got the straddle on again. I guess this is playing 5-10, a little bit bigger. And villain 7 made it 35. Villain 1 called. So here we go ahead and call. Stacks are real deep. We're going to flop real nice with this hand. So just right here real quick. Two pair or better. I got my coffee mug and 5.6% of the time. I had my coffee mug in front of my screen. I couldn't see anything. So, okay, the board comes king of spades, five of spades, five of clubs, and it gets checked around on this flop. Now, the turn's the two of hearts. What do you think you should do here? So, something you need to know about deep stack games is a lot of times people will check their top pairs. So, we can't just go, what does he not have, and say, it's likely we would have heard from a five. Although villain 5 could have been checking a 5, hoping to get some action. So if 5 is still live with villain 5, didn't expect to have so many fives in that rhyme. But villain 7, villain 1 could easily still have king. So he does something I really like here, which is he bets $30. So he's betting 30 to win 175. So his bet needs to work about 17% of the time, but he's going to hit the spades. There's a really good chance the spades are good on the river. So he's going to hit that about 19.5% of the time. So he's got a lot of things working for him right here. And if everybody does just have like 10-8 of diamonds or something like that, there's a good chance he gets them all to fold. So he gets called. The river comes to 8 of hearts, really tricky. What do you think he should do here? What do you think you should do here? He went ahead and checked, and I like that because the king will likely bet the river. But a lot of times, if the guy was just, okay, I don't believe this with sixes or sevens or fours or threes or ace two of diamonds, he'll probably check back. So that one, I really like the execution of that play. I don't remember the results of that hand. My apologies. So here we have Jack 10 offsuit. The straddle's on. Villain 9 raises, and Villain 9 has been raising quite a bit. So we decide to do a three bet here. Now, the offsuit big cards are pretty precarious in deep stacks, but if you can get a heads up, you got a little bit more wiggle room. So this opponent calls. The board comes ace of diamonds, nine of spades, four diamonds. It gets checked to us. What would we like to do here? All right, that's time. We go ahead and continuation bet. This player calls. The turn's the eight of diamonds. It gets checked to us. Checker bet. We decide to fire again here. Please compare your bet size or lack thereof to the one you see on the screen. This opponent calls. The river's the two of hearts. It gets checked to us. It's on us. Check a bet. All right, that is time. we move all in. Now, I don't recommend too many bluffs at lower stakes cash games just because most people call too much. So why would you be bluffing? This is one, though, that I really think you can get a little out of line with. So just think at every point in this hand, this is the magic question. What does my opponent not have? Now, the reason I asked that question is when I was a teenager and I was trying to play poker, because I didn't want to go back to commercial fishing, I chased every professional player I could. And I was like, please teach me how to play. Please teach me how to play. And, eventually I would bug them so damn much, they'd be like, okay, buy me a beer, kid, and I'll tell you why I played this hand this way. And 9 times out of 10, the old school hustlers, the ones who they're still making money. You wouldn't know their names, but they're doing really well in cash. What I noticed is when they were talking about hands, they go, I did this because this guy couldn't have this, or that. And that kind of let them know where they were. It was like a game of Battleship. Once you knew where they weren't, you knew where they were. And they would make their decisions based on that, and they tended to be very good decisions. So here, pre-flop, he just goes in and calls you. What does he not have? Well, he likely, and you should pause this video after every one of these questions and see if you get it. Start with the best hands first. So, what hands does he not have? Well, he likely would have 4-bet you with some aces or kings, so we can rule that out. Some guys would 4-bet the queens or ace-king. So the board comes ace-9-4. He checks to us, we bet, he just calls. There's a good chance at this point with the sets in 2 pairs, he would have check raised. Just because this is a bit of a dangerous board just to call down on with that flush draw out there. So on the turn, we have an open-ended straight draw. We have a flush draw. That's great. But more importantly, we bet here and he just calls. What does he not have at this point? A lot of times a flush would check jam. Now, if he's got the king, this is a very small percentage of the time. So small, we don't even really care. If he has king X of diamonds, he could be trapping you. But a lot of times people will even check jam just any flush because they're worried about that board pairing. They think there's a really good chance you got aces or nines or something like that. And if they get their money in ahead, they can sleep at night. They feel like, oh, I didn't do a stupid slow play. Slow plays are really derided in American culture, which is just a big word for mocked. A lot of times if you do a slow play and your opponent catches up, people go, oh, that's your fault. You should have played it fast. So a lot of people will fast play their flushes here. So now we've ruled out sets, 2 pairs, flushes, all of these hands. What does this guy have? This is so clearly a guy just holding himself with ace-7 of hearts saying, please don't bet, please don't bet. This is so clearly a guy with ace-queen offsuit saying, okay, I'll call and reevaluate the river. We say, okay, reevaluate this. Good luck to you. Now, do they ever pick you off here? Yes, it does happen. But that bet doesn't even need to work. I mean, this range is pretty capped, but let's say you're betting 980 to win 2,003.7. So this bet needs to work 48% of the time. You should always know how often each bet needs to work. If you bet 1/3 pot, it needs to work 25% of the time. You bet a half pot, it needs to work 33% of the time as an absolute bluff. You bet 2/3 pot, it needs to work 40% of the time. You bet 75% pot, it needs to work 42.8% of the time as an absolute bluff. The size of the pot, 50%, 1.5x pot, 60%, 2 times pot, 66%. So I didn't know the exact number right there, but I knew it was a hair under the size of the pot, so I guessed like 46. It was 48. I was in the ballpark. You're probably going to get a fold 60-something% of the time there. So really efficient triple barrel right there. So, okay, straddles on. We're back at 1-3. We decide to raise here with the 10-9 of diamonds. We get called in 2 spots. The board comes 10 of clubs, 6 of clubs, 4 of hearts. It gets checked to us. We're doing a lot of multi-way pots because you guys play a lot of multi-way pots. So we bet here. This person raises. What do? Little bit of review, so we'll just hammer this out really quickly. Remember the 3 defensive questions. Does my opponent do this with worse? Does my opponent value bet worse? Is this 10-8 suited? Again, the barbecue dads might raise with like 7s to see where they're at. And they'll shut down so you can call versus them. But a lot of guys won't do that, and you need to know who's a little bit more solid. Is this a flush draw? Yes, this could be a flush draw. But the third question, how many more bets are coming? This is a raise multi-way. That's a very aggressive line. That's usually pretty underbluffed. A lot of people keep firing with it. So you actually do have to think about a fold right here a lot of the time. Here you have 10-9 of diamonds. You raise the straddle. We had a bunch of straddles in this one. All right. Villain 2 calls, villain 5 calls. Well, a bunch of you had questions about straddle pots, so that's good. Board comes 10 of clubs, 5 of clubs, 4 of hearts. Gets checked to us. We bet 20. Lightning round right now. We get 2 calls. Turns to 7 of diamonds. It gets checked to us. Check or bet. All right, so if you fire here, what's the purpose of your bet? It's obviously for value. You have top pair. What weaker hands are calling you? 6, 7, ace 5 might call you because there's missed draws on that board, and that's just calling juice. 8s, 9s might call you. You could do another one here. So you bet. Now you get 2 callers. All right. River's the 3 of hearts. It gets checked to you. What would you like to do here? Now it's a little too thin. So we go ahead and check here. And this person bets 85. It's on you. What are you thinking? So a couple things should be going through your head. Defensive questions. Is he value betting worse? No, a lot of people won't fire 10-8 here. 9 to multiple players. Could this be a misdraw? Yes. Yes, this could be clubs. How many more bets are coming? Not applicable if you call. The hand ends right here. But just a few notes before we wrap up today. Certain lines are underbluffed at low stakes cash versus recreational players. Those lines again, raise turn, raise river, triple barrel, 3-bet followed by a double barrel, overbet, raise multi-way, bet into multiple players, then fire again on the turn. The bet check bet line tends to be more value concentrated. Not terrific value, but value. 3-bet the flop. But another thing you need to remember is the third bet and the 1/3 pot size bet tends to be value. Tends to be underbluffed. A lot of people don't have a missed flush draw here, see it get checked to them, and then they go, quick, bet 1/3 pot, that'll get them out. They've learned over time that doesn't work. So they usually bet a little bit bigger here, so that's a strike against us. Also, this is the third bet post-flop, and a lot of guys won't put the third bet in without the hand. So this is going to be a fold a lot of the time. So, all right, that's my time for today. If this is the kind of training you enjoy, I very much recommend going to my website, pokerheadrush.com. That website one more time, pokerheadrush.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. My newsletter is just poker tips every single day delivered right to your inbox. I understand your time is valuable. So, once in a while I'll talk about my lessons on that newsletter, but 6 days out of 7, you're just going to get a poker tip. It's going to be a 3-minute poker tip, 5 minutes max, something you can read at work, something you can read while you're commuting. It's something you can just read throughout the day, and it'll make you a little bit better of a poker player. And over the year, if you get 300 something of those tips, it's going to add up. So that's absolutely free to sign up for that mailing list, that newsletter. It also comes with 3 free training packages. You get one that'll teach you how to triple barrel bluff more effectively. You get one that'll teach you how to play ace king more effectively. And I put one, it's one of my older training packages. It's about 3-betting. A lot of people like that one. So I went ahead and threw that one in there as well. If you would like to contact me about private lessons, my email address is on that website, pokerheadrush.com, under the contact section. You can also reach me at alex@pokerheadrush.com. That email address one more time, alex@pokerheadrush.com. Write me if you're interested in private lessons. Tell me if you like tournaments or cash games, what stakes you're playing. I'll tell you if I'm the right guy for you. If I'm not the right guy for you, I'll get one of my friends. I know most of the big coaches. I'll put you in touch with them. My price is, I try to make it very valuable. It's $997 for 6 1-hour Zoom lessons. You get text breakdowns after each lesson, so you get a nice little 5-10 minute cheat sheet before you go play. That way you can just read the cheat sheet and it'll remind you of everything we talked about during the lesson. And you'll get a lot out of that. Uh, you'll really start developing faster and you'll start getting the results you want. If you want to see some of my testimonials, go ahead and just write me. I'll send you what other people have said about my training so you know you're getting something quality. You'll love it, man. All right. This is a good time. Hope you're all doing well. Take care out there, and best of luck to you on the foul. I'll see you for the next one of these.